In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
Top of the day, everyone. Nestor Licanto here with another edition of In Full Zoom. And this week we're going to talk about 2020. And I know you guys probably don't want to be reminded too much of that year, but we are going to take a look at the Guam Economic Report for 2020. And UOG did a study, and we wanted to bring in three of the co-authors of that report. First of all, we have Dr. Claret Ruane, who is an economics professor at UOG. We have Dr. Leila Kabigting, who is an associate professor of finance and the chair of the PMBA program at the school. And Mary Catherine Wiley is a senior student in accounting and finance and economics. And she's also the secretary of the local chapter of the Omicron Delta Epsilon International Honor Society for Economics, another co-author of the report. Thanks for joining us, ladies.
Thank you for this invitation, Nestor. We're happy to be here.
All right. Yeah. So let me just start with why. Why did you write this report? And if Dr. Claret, if you can give us a summary of the highlights, and I'll have Dr. Kabigting and Mary jump in as well. Go ahead, Dr. Claret.
Yes, thank you for letting me share. You know, I've had an opportunity to write reports like this for a while. I used to write it for one of our local banks for 6 years, and there were two other of these the last 2 years. So there's certainly a demand for this type of report for our local community, but also for off-island prospective business and investors looking into our island as an opportunity to operate here. So for this particular year, this report came out of my research internship course. So that's where the students were recruited and voluntold to some extent to co-author this report. But the geek in me, as we talk about the geek in me really loves research. And I look at research, and this is a serious matter for me, and I love to share this with my students. Research is the search for the truth. And so once they sign up to write this report, that's what they're signing up for. And we're looking for a product that is ethically done. We're looking for a product that is relevant to our conditions here on Guam. We're looking for a product that would be impactful, hopefully useful as people in our community make sometimes difficult decisions using some of the information we shared, our business community here as well, and our leadership on island.
All right, then Dr. Kabigting, let me start with you. Give us some of the a summary of some of the highlights.
Well, one, we talked about the financial assistance later on to the families and businesses here. We also discussed about the impact on tourism, on public safety and crime. So as we go along the way, I think there will be more detailed discussion. Also, just to support what Dr. Ruane mentioned, we are training our students not only for the undergraduate, but for the PMBA program to address issues in the community. So they are not just relying on textbooks. Thank you.
So I guess I'll take it from the students' perspective. So writing the report was an all-around experience that we put everything we learned to the test. So besides researching and writing skills, we must understand what is happening to our economy and necessarily know what information to look out for. So yes, Dr. Kabigting, this is different from textbook history, what we're used to reading about recessions and bubbles. We are actually observing firsthand government efforts and community reactions. So as much as we want to capture this all, again, we were limited to the data available. But yes, it was indeed a learning experience, and perhaps I learned how to make use and perhaps contribute to the data.
All right, and Claret, let's dig deep into it. What are some of the highlights of the report?
Yes, well, the highlights of the report. Well, I know, and that's the scary part about sharing our results. But again, research, you share whatever you find, good or bad. So I wanted to say this, and it's never black and white. There's a good side and there's a bad side to it. But let's put it this way. Our approach to this report is relatively macroeconomic, large picture. And that's, the bias is because of me as a macroeconomist. So when you look at an economy, you kind of split it into different groupings. And the groupings would be, what was the impact, as Dr. Kabigting already talked about, the impact on families, the impact on businesses, the impact on government. And for our concerns, we have two sides of the government, Gov Guam and the federal government, the impact on visitors to our island, the tourism sector.
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information.
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
All right, Dr. Ruane, maybe we can start digging deeper into it. How bad was 2020? Can you give us some of the highlights?
When you're going to make me the bearer of bad news, Nestor, nothing is black and white. But I want to say, to preface this, because there are other studies happening at the same time, and we will get a fuller picture of the situation once a lot of the studies are out. Our approach tends to be macroeconomic, high, large picture level. And so what we did was to break down the main groupings in our economy, the sources of spending in our economy. So households and consumers and families in one category, businesses, government spending split between Gov Guam and federal government, and also spending by our visitors, our tourism sector. So it's well known right now that our tourism sector has really, really taken a beating. And so what we tried to do is, we're very proud of having done some original calculations. And again, this is not easy to do. And I'm sure there's a lot of errors, once we find out the reality, we'll find out. We'd like to know how close we get to the real numbers. But our estimate is our tourism sector, the reduction there, the decline in our sector, it resulted in a loss of $1.38 billion worth of our economy, the size of our economy. Fortunately for us, and this was one of the main themes in the report, is that the federal government, through pandemic assistance, actually filled in, more than compensated for that, at $1.6 billion. I know that not all of that has been received by us, and of course not all of it has been encumbered at this point. But let's put it this way. So if you're just looking at those two sectors, we're a bit ahead because of the federal support. Gov Guam, we factored in as the budget for 2020 was maybe 5% lower in terms of revenue expected compared to the previous year. So we just kind of patterned that as this is the source of spending for Gov Guam. So Gov Guam spending is about the same, maybe reduced. Keep in mind when we say that, because it feels like, well, Gov Guam spending a lot. Well, this is Gov Guam spending from its own budget. So not counting the Fed money that's already in. So we're factoring that separately because that applies to business and consumer spending also. Fed money went into to help our families and businesses. And again, you can't double count things. So we don't have numbers for it. I know that Dr. Jones was a guest of yours just maybe 2 weeks ago, and I know she has a study on, she has a business survey going on, household survey going on, so we'll find out, right? But we had to say, our estimate is that household spending was probably down 30 to 50% compared to last year. And business spending probably 50 to 70%. You shouldn't be surprised, right, with the lockdowns. And let's put it this way, maybe consumer spending might not be down, but there's a lot of online spending that's happening. So it's not really being purchased from our economy. So when you put that all together, we don't know how it shakes out. It's possible. Our most optimistic estimate is that our economy only went down by 0.7%, less than 1%. At the macro level. So some people might say, but I was affected so much. That's at the individual level. As a large economy, right. It's possible that we won't even see it number-wise, right? But it could be as bad. So we did a pessimistic, optimistic forecast. It could be as bad as we're down about 19%. Yes.
Good. I was just going to ask Dr. Kabigting, maybe if you can talk about some of the specific impacts of COVID-19, maybe some specific examples.
Yes, as we have seen in the news, there were a lot of businesses that had closures, but this also, the pandemic somehow opened some opportunities for others. Some businesses were able to retool themselves, complying with the restrictions. So we had curbside delivery, the internet service was up. Also, of course, essential services were identified. Going back to what Dr. Ruane pointed out, one of the, we have on table 9 in the study, the financial assistance that the families here in Guam have received. And this is on the December 6th data. $500 million were already provided to those who are eligible out of the budget of 924. I have to make sure my numbers are correct. And then, of course, table 10 also presents the assistance that were given to the businesses. One of them is the pay protection program. So as what Dr. Ruane mentioned, this federal grants would have somehow, what do you call this? Help the economy cope up with the current situation.
How about you, Mary, from your perspective, what did you glean from the report in terms of the specific COVID-19 event?
So it always circles back to tourism, because tourism is a major driver to Guam's economy and was first to feel the effects of COVID. It is a very sensitive industry, so yes, it suffered immediately early into the pandemic in March. Now, at first, COVID did bring up many priorities, right? How to recover our markets, how to maintain revenues, and overall, how to put up a headstrong Guam. And GVB was optimistic and moved forward with returning tourism. However, as we continue to see this pandemic drag out, we see this shift in priorities. So valuing the community, our business owners, and our families, there is that refocus on reducing COVID spread and emphasizing safety. I just want to say that there is really no telling it is react, then act. This is seeing how GVB adapts to new efforts and projections. So remember, from expected arrivals of 250,000 to 400,000, then 82,000 in the fiscal year, our tourist economy is, well, say, trickling. So it is slowly picking back up and resuming to what should be normal. And lowering projections is not a setback. In fact, I think this pace works out to keeping an eye on neighboring markets. So while it was first believed that jumping back in was an ideal goal, such as Japan with their track plans or Hawaii with a safe travel program, there will always be holes in the plan no matter how hard everyone works together. So Hawaii in this case is the perfect example, with changing plans to meet these demands with the rapid testing, pre-testing requirements, and working with providers, as well as the concerns of residents. And I just want to pick up on this mindset that picking up tourism later into the fiscal year, it was projected third or fourth quarter, is setting that steady pace to rebuild tourism. And perhaps this pace is sort of reassurance to that split feeling everyone has of wanting tourism to come back immediately right now, but while also holding reservations. And this is a window of opportunity. While GVB is upgrading and branching out, this is also a time for new industries to emerge and turn over a new leaf.
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information.
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
She's so optimistic.
Yeah, I think based on what you're telling us, we definitely need to be very nimble in the next year and years to come. Dr. Ruane, let me go back to you. I think you had made that indication a little bit earlier that absent any federal assistance, we'd be in much, much bigger trouble. Talk a little bit about that federal assistance that helped us keep us afloat through 2020.
Well, yeah, that's the other calculation that we did, because with the 1.6 billion that we received, that's the one that might allow us to get away with only 0.7% reduction in our economy. But if this is the beauty of, again, being analytical And, we're trying to be careful with our forecast, but one option is to run a simulation of if we did not receive that money. It's the what if, right? And so as we've already reported in our report that we're looking at a reduction in Guam's economy by 42 to 49%. So we're talking about taking our economy and cutting it into half. And so it's kind of hard to relate to that because like how many people really know GDP? But what I'm saying is this, think of yourself as, this is all the possessions and material possessions and the benefits that you have right now. Can you imagine your lifestyle being cut into half, where you only half of the things that you enjoy? That's really the concept because GDP is production, it's output, it's goods and services that are being produced by our economy. And they're being produced because there's a demand for them, and people buy them for preference, for their own convenience, for their own benefits. So if we're producing less, if the Fed money wasn't here to get spent here, our production, our economy would have been reduced by about half. And the other option is this. Either people and businesses are buying less, or they might be buying the same or about the same, but that means they're buying from elsewhere. Again, that takes me back to purchases. I'm in the buy local movement. We'd like to keep the money here to generate business here, to generate income and taxes for us. So any money that leaves and gets purchased, and I'm guilty too. I do online purchasing. It's safer, right? You just click the button and you purchase it. But that's the thing. We don't have data on that, to what extent that's happening. I went to the post office website to find out how many packages come here and get delivered. We don't have information. So we have anecdotal data of people lining up at the post office to pick up their packages. But that really is the extent of the federal assistance. And, I can't speak for everybody. As an economist, I really see that for us, at least last year, this was really, really, this mitigated what could have been a more negative effect on us. Now, for the following year, it's a bit tricky because it's not going to be the same size. I don't know what to expect, but we're looking at, if I even run my calculation for what if we don't get 1.6 billion, what if we only get 500 million? That's about a third. And obviously the numbers would adjust. And keep in mind, this is money that we needed at the time. The timing is perfect at the time that we needed.
All right, so let me just go around robin here and ask you folks to talk about your conclusions from this report, and we'll start with Dr. Kabigting and work our way back around. Dr. Kabigting, some conclusions on the 2020 Guam Economic Report.
As we have discussed earlier, we suggest that it is time to look at potential other businesses. However, to do that, we also have to think what skills would the workforce need to have them ready for these new businesses. Mary?
Oh, so exactly, there is. So the think tank proposed by the Guam Chamber of Commerce, for example, identified potential ideas, made assessment, and listed benefits to our island. The paper is divided to short-term, mid-term, and long-term plans, from revisiting fees to marketing to promoting and creating incentives. And I'm amazed to know Dr. Ruane is familiar with the incentive program.
Oh, it's back to me. Well, Nestor, I had the privilege 12 years ago to actually look at the QC law and design, again, I'm academic, so that's what I do. So design, or at least try to make proposals for how to improve the QC program. So I know that's quite in the spotlight again, because in fact, I'll double check, but I know from the 35th legislature, there were already a few bills that were passed. And again, I need to double check for accuracy, but some might have become public laws to use QC to develop new industries. So the idea, though, is when we give tax incentive, the QC in general cases, right, it's 75% tax abatement for 20-year period. But keep in mind, so we have to understand why we're doing this. And the reason we're giving this incentive is precisely to attract investors into the new industries that we think will benefit us. But as we attract them, we're giving them this benefit where we're giving up the tax that they would have paid us. And this is where the attraction comes in. in the end of it, we need to net out that we come out ahead, right? So what I had proposed was a methodology based on the QC law and listing the industries we prioritize. What I suggested is a scoring sheet, and don't give everything maxed out. Don't give the entire 75% tax abatement 20 years. The more benefits that these new industries and new investors bring to us, the more that we want them to come. So we certainly want to incentivize more. Again, because you have to ask, this is tax dollars that we could be collecting. And to some extent, we're giving it away. We need to be very precise about that. There is an aspect to this also. As we develop the new industry, as a development economist, there is this literature on infant industry. And usually the idea is, the term itself is, yes, we're developing new industries. They're going to start out as babies, as infants. We don't want them to stay as infants, right? The idea with the incentive is, your infant, we're going to cut you a break. It's like parenting. You're my child. I'm going to help you out. I'm going to, help you develop your values, find yourself, and be a member of this productive member of this community. They cannot stay as infant. They cannot survive only because of the incentive that's being offered to them. So I think if you set up tax and investment incentives, it needs to be very clear what the performance requirements would be, and also what the timing would be. This is not, we don't want perpetual infants. And there's a lot of examples in many other countries where, it's a good idea, but in the application, it doesn't work. And then it becomes a waste of very, very valuable, very limited tax dollars. So that's the first part of our conclusion. And I wish I'd stop here, because the second part of our conclusion, I think, is a little bit more controversial. And to be honest, this is just speaking for myself. This is out of my expertise area. So let's put it this way, and maybe I'll just speak for myself. This is not a conclusion that we want to lead to. However, as you do in research, you don't know where you're going to end up in. So as we wrote our paper, and as it's winding down, coming together, again, going back to the assistance we got from the federal government, it's only possible because of our current political status in relation with the US. So as much as I'm staying away from politics, because I'm not good with that, I'm an economist, right? But there is an economic aspect to political status, and I'm going to stay in my lane, which is about the economics. And that's the numbers that I shared. Without federal assistance, our economy would have been half the size, meaning the decline would have been 49%. Without the federal government completely, our economy on the good days would have been, we would have lost a third of our economy. During the pandemic, we would have lost 3/4 of our economy. So my point is, for the experts in this field, I obviously, we don't want to tell you what to do, but as any good decisions, important decisions like this, you need to weigh everything, what is given up and what would be the benefits in the process. And I know it's not all about money, not all about economics, but that's all we ask for is we rely on the expert to at least hopefully include that statement from us and the perspective that we present here. And I think that's all right. That's the conclusion.
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information.
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
Actually, we've got a couple of more minutes left. If you can, each of you, want to ask you just to give us really briefly what your expectations are for 2021 economically. Dr. Kabigting.
Expectations. There are talks about the stimulus. I know in the US they have received it. Guam is still waiting for the stimulus. Given our experience last year with the federal governments giving out this assistance, I would believe that somehow it would also soften or lessen the slowdown of the economy. So as we have given the estimates, there could be a worst or a best scenario. If the stimulus comes in, then probably the impact, the macroeconomic impact on the economy would not be too much.
All right. And Mary, what do you think?
About the mixed feelings for 2020. Yes, so it was very unprecedented. We were expecting a $31.7 million loss, and then now we find that we exceed projections by 26 million. And from a general perspective, this surplus would mean our revenues exceed expenditures and that Guam's financial position is recovering or floating, maintaining. But we also need to determine further if Guam has reached this revenue generating capacity, right? So meaning in the future, will we be continuing to see an increase of our revenues? Like how can we bring it back, increase it ourselves? Or are we really just stretching it, imposing, taking it from federal assistance or imposing it on our residents, our citizens? So I think this is the time that we decide for ourselves how we're going to move forward. It's an optimistic view on it, if positive.
All right, and Dr. Ruane, let me just finish off with you. You got about a minute to tell us what you expect to see in 2021.
Well, I'm torn right now because in the report we did say we wanted to be careful and we withheld forecast for 2021 just because we're waiting for more information. Please understand, Nestor, in terms of GDP, our latest is 2018. So we had to estimate 2019 and then we had to estimate 2020. So for us to go a third year, I mean, I do worry. And I think you're sensing that I'm most comfortable forecasting if I like to work with numbers. However, if you put together some that's already been shared by my co-authors, I mean, and I already mentioned the federal assistance that we got, it's not going to be 1.6 billion. As I said, I mean, if you look at the EIP and the PUA, they're going to be less than what we got before. If you look at the PPP round, I'm sorry, I haven't seen a dollar figure on that, so I don't know what that looks like. There is going to be a gain in the NDEA that just got approved because we're looking at more than 600 million. I think last year we were about 350 million. So there's when you put that together, federal government the federal spending on Guam, including pandemic spending and military projects, is just going to be as a total is going to be less, unless that's made up for by other elements. Maybe our business sector, we want them to recover. Maybe they'll recover enough to compensate for that. And then consumers as well, businesses recovering and employment opportunities, maybe we'll catch up with that. But I'm so uncomfortable. I think our team was uncomfortable to make that forecast. So as we say, we salute those who have shared their forecasts. They are brave. We're faint-hearted. And so please forgive us.
We definitely have our work cut out for us. Buy local, everybody, to support the local economy. Let's get us back on our feet. Thank you very much, ladies, appreciate your time. Dr. Maria Claret Ruane from the UOG, as well as Dr. Leila Kabigting, also from UOG, and Mary Catherine Wiley, a student up there. Thank you for joining us and for sharing the 2020 Guam Economic Report. I'm Nestor Licanto. We'll see you again next week on In Full Zoom.
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.